Today, we're creating the building blocks to change this ghost town into a city that feels alive. Welcome back to Tiny Brick City. Up until now, the city is a collection of empty shells and silent streets. It has the grid, it has the buildings, but it doesn't have a soul. And fixing that's something I'm really looking forward to. Adding people, telling little stories, bringing those small details. That's what makes a city feel alive. Let's start with the most important part, the people. We can't use minifigs. If we place them in the city, it looks wrong. The houses are too small, so they have to go. But that's okay. It was kind of the concept of the city anyway. Luckily, there are other options. First, I tried Lego babies. They fit the scale much better. And because of their head and hands, they still have that classic Lego look. But they are still a bit too tall. Plus, they're expensive and hard to find. Then there are the Lego statues. The scale is pretty good, but they feel a bit dull. It's like they're not real people, just statues. Lego has printed versions, which definitely help, but they'll probably start feeling repetitive. So for a long time I was stuck between those two options. Until I came across this. This image instantly triggered me. It's not detailed, it's just a suggestion. But you immediately recognize who this is. I saw more builds using the same idea. With only 4 simple pieces, somehow each tiny figure has its own personality. That's exactly what I love about microscale. 4 plates suggests the person. Your mind fills in the rest. And that is so much better than the babies and the statues. I can play with the colors, the tile on top, small variations, and suddenly it each feels like a different character. A black and white one looks like someone heading to work. More flashy colors feels like a tourist. Blue and black could be a police officer. White plates even suggest a chef. It's basically a micro minifig. Legs, torso, head, and something on top as hair or a hat. It's simple, but it works perfectly. And this is what's finally going to bring the city to life. But there are more things to do. A few people suggested adding lanterns in front of the buildings, to make it feel like a real city. Some of the mocks I already used had them, but I took them away. They all look different designs, different sizes, and that just wouldn't work. I want this to feel like one city, so they needed to be consistent. But which one should I pick? The simplest version is just a small beam with a round plate on top. But it's too simple. And too low. Or new inhabitants would hit their heads. So what is the right size? In my opinion, twice the height of a person. But also tall enough to match the buildings. At least 1 floor high, maybe even higher. And those two don't really line up. So it's about finding a balance. I tried a version with a dish on top. But it draws way too much attention and doesn't really fit the microscale look. Replacing it with a simple plate already feels much better. Then I added a plate underneath a light and a round piece at the base to smooth out the transition from square to round. It's a small detail, but it makes the whole thing feel more refined. Compared to the buildings, it might be a bit too small. But next to the people, it works. So I think this is the one. Let me make a few of them and add them to the city later. Another thing the city really needs is some greenery. Flower beds, parks, open space. So let's start with something simple. Trees. I already had this design from the small church. In that version, it was massive. almost bigger than the church itself. But if we place it next to the other buildings, it's much smaller. And that's fine. Trees come in all sizes. I can make it a bit taller with some extra flower pieces, but there's a limit to that. So now this works as a smaller city tree. I also found another design I really like. One snot piece in the middle, jumper plates on all sides, and some 1x1 plates to finish it off. It creates this nice round shape that fits really well at this scale. And combining different designs makes the city feel more natural. But when I started thinking about greenery, I wanted to do things a bit differently. Most LEGO cities go for bright green trees, but I got inspired by the LEGO treehouse set. And I wanted to feel like fall. Warmer colors, red, oranges, something that really contrasts with the buildings. I don't have the right pieces for that yet, so most trees will stay green for now. But eventually I want to change that. Now again, the scales becomes a problem. For people, these trees work perfectly. They can walk underneath them, sit in the shade, it feels right. But next to the buildings, they're actually quite small. And I would love to have one of those big, impressive trees that grows taller than a house. But I just can't seem to make it work. The shape looks off, the trunk gets too tall and awkward. I also couldn't find any good examples at this scale. So here's a small challenge. If anyone has a good design for a larger tree that fits in my city and doesn't take more than one module, let me know. For now, we'll stick with what we have. Smaller city trees. We can place them around the church and along the streets. So now that we have this sorted out, there's one last thing I want to add to the city. Cars. And honestly, it has been one of the biggest struggles so far. The scale is just really hard to get right. And I'm not sure if I figured it out. The Brick Club is working in the same scale and uses very simple cars. Just a jumper plate and a tile. They look clean, they look nice, but for me they feel too small. I tried adding wheels underneath to give them a bit more presence. It helps, but not enough. They are barely half the height of a person. They can even fit through doors. So I decided to go bigger. But that's where this scale becomes tricky. Because a bit bigger is actually double the size. And double might already be too much. Now the cars almost fill the entire street. But that's the compromise. I need to choose what feels more right. And if I have to choose between cars that are too small or cars that are slightly too big, I'll take the bigger ones. Because at least they feel believable. They're about the width of two people, which actually makes sense. And compared to the buildings, their height isn't that bad either. Plus, the bigger size gives me more freedom. I can add details, give each car its own style, make them feel unique. While researching car options, I found this image of a Volkswagen van, and I wanted to recreate this. But I couldn't get it right. I don't know how they made them look so good in the picture. Maybe they were not fully connected. This is my final version. They feel a bit too blocky, they don't quite have the vibe I was going for, but I'll keep them for now, as a reminder to come back to this later and try again. And honestly, they don't look that much worse than the rest of the cars anyway. So for now, this works. That was the final piece. Here's an overview of everything I have built today. I ran out of time for this video, so I'll stop here. Next time, I'll be adding them to the city. See you then, in Tiny Brick City.